Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Core Women Podcast. Today, I will be chatting with Margie Oleson, a powerhouse in leadership development and organizational excellence. With decades of experience across diverse industries, Margie has mastered the art of transforming top teams into cohesive, high-performing units. She shares insight from her top Team Accelerator program and her unique approach to improving leadership through better processes, habits, and tools like working genius assessment. Margie reveals the secrets to breaking down silos, enhancing clarity, and ensuring that leadership development creates lasting change in organizations. Let's get ready to dive right in. Welcome, Margie.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here. Before we jump into the professional aspects of your life, can you describe your life journey in one word to this point?
I would say the word finally, and it has 4 or 5 exclamation points after it.
Tell us more.
So for me, people that have known me for a while know me as someone who can move very quickly. My thought processes go very quickly. I'm intuitive. I'm discerning. I can come in and read a room and I can map out the next 3 things that need to happen no matter what we're doing. If we're in a restaurant or we're in a meeting, my brain just works that way. But for some reason, the way it is with all of us, I don't have that around my own journey. I've had all of these starts and stops, and I learned that I was continuing to try to live my life the way that it had been fed to me, the way that I had been trained as a female, as a youngest child, as a person growing up in a family that didn't go to college, that you have to reference outside into the world to get your answers. And I had this whole wealth of wisdom and discernment inside, and I wasn't tapping it. And it has taken me a while to finally appreciate how to get information, how to make decisions, and then how to turn it back out into the world after going in first.
I love that. I think that's such a incredible example of conditioning
Yes.
and where that leads us. Because you described that so wonderfully, I'm going to touch back on that question. Where were some of those reflection points for you where you began to realize something needed to change?
So coming out of a childhood of chaos and difficulty, a lot of issues in the family, I just came out of it pretty lost, pretty accustomed to change and not for the good of it. And so I embarked on my own adult journey that had a lot of starts and stops and decisions that weren't the best for me or even for others. And then when I joined corporate America, I found myself continuing to get laid off and fired.
Mm.
And what I did, because I can see what's going on around me and I was trained to add value at all costs. So I would just stop what I was doing and try to be a better team player. I would hunker down and try to be even more available. I would try to be even more vocal, or I would try to be quiet. I would do all of these pieces of myself to behave in ways that actually didn't fit who I am. And I was uncomfortable most of the time. And I was a single parent. So I stopped the train of continuing to pursue relationships where I might end up getting married again. And I focused on my children and my education. And I earned a master's degree in organizational management. And I went on and earned my doctorate in organization development, and I was shocked. So I come into this OD doctorate program, 4 years of coursework where I'm thinking organizations are a mess. They're a hot mess. The leaders are struggling. There's a lot of people that are getting promoted that shouldn't, and people that are out the door that should stay. And I was shocked to figure out, well, we already know what to do. We're just not doing it. So I focused my dissertation, my research on what's going on in organizations and found out 2 things. Number one, there is a gap between knowing and doing. The brain doesn't just do things because it knows it. But the other thing is they're not caught up in what's best for the day to day. They're not training leaders. They're actually not training them. They're not coaching them. They're not teaching them leadership being a thing. Whereas we would hire a plumber who knows how to be a plumber, and we would hire somebody who's going to do our legal after they went to law school and passed the bar and maybe even had some industry experience. But these leaders, it's kind of the equivalent of I graduate from high school, and then on one hand, they hand me a diploma, and on the other hand, they hand me a teaching job because I've been around. I know the cafeteria, I know the building. And so I thought, my goodness, my leader and my leader's leader, and even my leader's leader's leader are making it up as they go along. And none of them has the capacity to pause and say, we can do this differently, or we have to make this better. And it's kind of a big secret. And growing up in my household, secrets were abound, and I don't like secrets. So I made it my passion, my mission in life to bring what we really know about how to lead to these leaders and help them and their teams just have a better day.
My goodness. This segued right into my next question so well. So I was going to ask you, share a bit about your background, how you developed your skills in leadership development, and how you put together a consulting business to help companies to develop teams that are cohesive, high performing, and are able to sustain these skills. You've answered half of that question about the evolution of how you got to where you are today to help companies. Tell us more about how you put together a consulting business to help these companies to be more cohesive, high performing, honest, transparent, and to help them sustain these skills.
So first of all, leaders they're doing the best they can, and there's a lot on their plate. And today, coming out of the last several years, we now have really, really big issues in companies. We have 5 generations. That's not an automatic thing to deal with. We have a global economy. We have information that is viral, so you can have a perception change about your market or your service or your product in ways that you haven't had before. And you have all kinds of people there who are needing to have their day be benefited from or negatively impacted by how it goes. And so when I learned that there are really only about 5 very important foundational blocks to being an effective leader and having an effective team, I realized, number one, those podcasts that you're hearing, the books that you're reading, the articles that you're reading, the experts you're hearing from, they're basing what they're talking about on those same 5 building blocks. So those haven't changed, whether you're a virtual team or an in-person team. And that was really surprising to me. The going into having my own business started because when I tried to bring that information back into corporate America, there wasn't a place for it. When you're an internal consultant, it's as if you can't see the frame because you're actually inside the photo. Can't be a prophet in your own land. I did go kicking and screaming to being an entrepreneur because I didn't think I had the personality. Youngest child, always chasing after everybody, feeling like I'm always one day late or $1 short. But then I started to focus on myself, had some things that happened that just were life looking the same as it was 5 years ago and 10 years ago and 15 years ago. So I started doing things that are available to me, like therapy and trauma therapy. And I joined a 12-step group. And I've been doing some work in human design, if you've heard about that. And so once I started to hear some of the same themes from each of those different aspects of my journey, I started to believe it. Trust was not my number one activity. And so it took me a while. But once I started to hear it from different sources, and then I started to notice when I made the decisions that felt good in my gut, there was a different way that I experienced that. And I knew that even if others aren't doing this in organizations, I can do this. I can bring this to them. And so what I started doing is offering bursts. I can come in and help you fix your meetings. Meetings, an $85 billion problem, says Forbes, every single year in the US. Nobody likes them. People avoid them and they have them on their calendar all day. Talk about passive suffering. Your calendar is leading your life and it's not helping you be successful. I can change that. And when people start to see that that can change, they realize the things getting in the way of better meetings, they're also getting in the way of more effective leadership. They're also getting in the way of a team that functions well. The first thing I do with teams and leaders is help them with their meetings. And I always introduce leaders to those 5 building blocks so that they understand that they've never had this before, even if they think they've tried it. Even if they've hired a consultant or had a training, they've never done it this way where you have to deal with the brain. You can't just say it and walk away. But one of the first things we do is the working genius assessment. So if you're not familiar with that, very quickly, that's Lencioni's latest assessment. Working genius is the most helpful productivity and teamwork tool. I do it with teams because it's fast, but it's really deep. It's broad and it's deep, and it helps people plan the life cycle of a product, a service. When you come into a meeting, you don't want the person that's good at inventing things to keep inventing when you've already done that. You've already decided what you're going to do, and now you're in the stages of doing it. You don't want the people who are actually asking questions to be at those meetings. These are all simple little things that we can do. The other thing that Working Genius does is it helps people feel better about the things that really do bring them joy and energy. It's very strategic. It's not simple. It's not, oh, we just want to have fun at work. No, we actually want to be successful. The last thing I'll say about this that really helped me with my business is I really haven't met leaders who get up every morning and want to do a terrible job. I've not met leaders who try to be toxic, who try to promote toxic people, who don't want to deal with their teams and they really want to hide away from them. What I have met are leaders who are not sure what to do. Well, I can help you with that. And so once we deploy the typical coaching strategies where you hear it from me and then you experience it and then you learn it and then I observe it and then you practice it and then you go after the stubborn root causes that are getting in the way, but everything else is starting to gain traction. Now you've learned how to learn how to be a leader.
Nice. So you've tapped into some of the things that you do with your business, Top Team Accelerator,
Yes.
and these 5 dysfunctions of a leader.
Yep.
You had mentioned people don't wake up wanting to do a bad job. They wake up wanting to do something good, wanting to be productive. But what are you seeing most leaders do? Are they passionate about what they're doing when they wake up? Are they aligning their vision for what they're doing as a leader in a business, their entrepreneurship, in their job? Is it aligning with their own personal values? Tell me what your findings are.
In theory, leaders feel like their values are important. They feel like they bring skills and knowledge to the table. They feel like they really care. They care about their life and they need to have an income and they need to have a structure, but they also want to make the community a better place to live. But then they get caught up in, and I would make it better if I didn't have to go to so many meetings. I would make it better if my team members wanted to actually perform. I would make it better if my leaders cared at all about what I was doing, or they supported me when I need to make a change. Let's say I need to move somebody out of the organization. And they are so siloed now, and remote work has made that worse. So you have these companies grappling with having people remote versus in person. And we have to do for people what they may not decide to do for themselves, kind of like a teenager in the household. I don't let the teenager in the household decide what the mortgage should look like. They can make some decisions at that point in their life, but not about the mortgage. People don't realize it's better for them to engage with their leaders and team members in person sometimes. And when they don't do that, you're missing an entire aspect of the human experience, this energetic exchange. So what I find with leaders is they need some confidence building, but they're not going to say that. It doesn't look good for a leader to look like they're not confident. It doesn't look good for a leader to say, I need help. Yeah. That's a world that we want to change. We've learned that vulnerability is a normal thing, and we want to grow that. While we're working on that, leaders need something to hold on to that they can have a quick win that says, oh, that really worked for me to be able to deploy this new strategy, let's say for meetings. Now I've also solved the meetings problem. So I freed up some time and energy in my day and the time and energy in the day of the people that I lead so that we can get to some of the things that I complain about that I can't get to. One of the things that I heard along the way is that you can't change culture. And actually, that's not true. Here's the thing. Do you know what culture is? I would call culture in an organization all of the decisions and habits of the people in charge. So how a leader leads every day, those are habits. How they do performance management, habits. How they communicate with their staff, habits. How they communicate with their leaders and their leaders, habits. How they do their meetings, all of that. And habits are the brain's way of keeping us alive. 99.9% of the brain is just ready for survival every day. So we have to develop these neural pathways that are habits. And so what I bring into my coaching is to remind a leader they're just a whole compendium of their habits, and we can change. And we start with a few. We start with the critical few. So Top Team Accelerator gets around to the 4 big areas that they can work on first, 5 because clarity and alignment are combined. Once they start to change their habits, they really have opened up their brain to new habits, and they've learned a skill for how to learn new habits. So if I'm trying to get to the gym more often, it's all about habits. James Clear, Atomic Habits, if you haven't read that, for people that are listening, fantastic book. And you can let yourself off the hook for all of your outcomes once you realize your brain is on autopilot. Your brain is leading. You want to lead your brain. You don't have to lead all your thoughts, the 60 to 100,000 every single day. You want to lead the ones that are important. Get yourself on a path where you're focusing on the critical few. And to everyone listening, every leader, hire a coach. You have been trained to think that leadership should be natural. It's not the way we're doing it. You've been trained to think that it's all in your head already and you just got to get it out. Nope, those are all habits and you have to unlearn them. Hire a coach and give yourself time and energy at work to focus on that. And what I learned in my research is to leaders, you got about 12 to 18 months where you can do that in your own little world without it being impacted by whether or not the rest of the world in your culture at your company is going along with you. You and your team can become a high-performing team for 12 to 18 months before you need someone else to also do that. So help yourself, hire a coach, get access to this information, and then give yourself a pat on the back that you're going to take a little time and space to learn this, because learning is a different thing than what the brain is doing every day with our habits.
Absolutely. And because you're focusing on habits, how long would you say it takes behavior to change and form into a habit?
Well, you've heard the make your bed every day for 3 weeks and you'll make it for
Yes.
the rest of your life. I have
Yes.
not found that to be true. What I have
Mhm.
found to be true is what systems do you put in place to help the brain keep going? And that's going to vary. It's also going to vary depending upon how you feel about it and what your attitudes are. If you think that this is all just a bunch of theoretical mumbo jumbo, you're going to come in with a skepticism. But I tell you, when people fix their meetings, they think that the heavens have opened and miracles are occurring everywhere because no one ever told them we can do this different. Or I'll come
Mhm.
in and I'll say, well, here's the 3 things we're going to do to change your meetings. And they'll say, we've done all that. Yeah, no, you tried some things, but you didn't turn them into habits. And then politics or fear of missing out, FOMO, or you don't have the right tools to even check with people on did they do the thing they said they would last week? And why do you have the questioners in the meeting when you've already made the decisions? Once you start doing those things, and once you use tools, they can be so simple. You can have an Excel spreadsheet for progress. That is so simple. That tool, the visual, the actual filling it out, that helps your brain develop a habit faster. So it depends on what tools you use. And that's why hiring a coach is so important, because the coach will be the voice of your brain and its change process. If left to your own devices, you'll get the outcomes you've already had.
Yeah, love all of the stuff. We've touched on so much from the evolution of your journey, how you developed your business, Top Team Accelerator. You've touched on the Working Genius assessment, all fabulous. You've given us so many tips, so many ideas. You say hire coach, and I think this is a great suggestion. But when somebody goes to look for a coach, what should they be looking for?
So, first of all, you want to interview a few of them. And if they take you off on a lot of tangents, oh, you have to focus on 27 things. No, no. You want to be really clear about what your leader's goals are and how your goals fit into that. And then your team members need to understand how their work fits into your goals. And then they need to know every week how you think they're doing. You think you can go off to a ropes course or have a day at the park to build teams? No, you give them clarity around their goals and you make sure they have what they need to deliver for you. And you let them know every single week how you think they're doing. That increases morale and builds the team. That's what actually builds the team. So you want a coach that is going to appreciate those few building blocks to start with. I once worked with a small team who they worked together every day for a year. and were telling their own teams a different story about what they were supposed to be doing. And they didn't even know that because they weren't checking. So you want a coach who's going to talk to you about the critical few and then plot out for you. Here's what the next 90 days looks like coaching with me. We're going to ensure that you fix your meetings. We're going to ensure that you have increased your self-awareness, and we will ensure that you know what to do with those people that report to you. And then we're going to come back and revisit after 90 days. Do we want to continue to working together?
Yeah, thank you so much for those suggestions. I think all of these tips, everything that you've said today is just so impactful. So, my last question for you is, as we come to the close of the interview, can you give the listeners one tip to support their journeys as high performance leaders?
So the single greatest capability is self-awareness. And you can go to therapy to get some of that. You can take a class. You can be in a mastermind group with other leaders. That builds self-awareness. Google self-awareness and find out what are the free or available or immediate strategies that you can do. And anything you do in that realm will help you as a leader and help you lead your team.
Thank you, Margie, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You can follow Margie Oleson on LinkedIn at Margie Oleson, and you can also follow her on www.olson-consulting.com and www.topteamaccelerator.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.